Welcome to the Vitality Shift podcast for chiropractors. I'm your host, Dr. Don McDonald, author of the best-selling book, The Underdog Curse. Weekly, we will be interviewing amazing chiropractors from around the world, finding out how they made their vitality shift. If you're a chiropractor that either wants to just move your practice away from treating pain and conditions, or if you just want to stay inspired, this podcast is for you. For more information on past shows, please visit www.drdonmcdonald.com, and I hope you enjoy the show. Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Vitality Shift podcast for chiropractors. This is Dr. Don McDonald, your host, and I get to bring back another return guest. This is one of my mentors, Dr. Gilles Lamarche from Life University. He's already been on the podcast, so if you want to listen back to his origin story, please just go to www.drdonmcdonald.com and check out our first interview with Gilles, and then you can kind of get his whole backstory. But today what we want to do is we want to dive into some of the cool stuff that he's doing at the moment. As we know, the world's kind of frozen with this COVID-19 issue going on, and one of the most inspirational guys I know to help you keep your mindset going is Dr. Gilles Lamarche. So welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Dr. Don. Always a pleasure to be with you. You know, our history goes back a long, long way. I just love what you're doing to support the profession. And you and your wife, Brandy, are helping so many people around the globe. So I'm honored to be your guest again today.
Yeah, and it's always fun because it's every time when we go back to the old Parker seminars and hearing you speak all the time would always get me so excited and fired up. And I thought you'd be a great person to talk to during these times because a lot of chiropractors are basically at home because a lot of them they either can't be in their practice, or if they are in their practice, just like we are, we can go in like maybe 2 half days a week and just see emergency people. So with us being kind of stagnant, I know you're kind of a master of mindset. What are some of the things you think chiropractors could do right now to keep their brain from going down the rabbit hole of doom and dread?
Well, that's a great question, and it's an interesting one because, of course, at Life University, we've been closed already for a few weeks, mandated by the governor. And, we can talk about what we've had to do to make sure that our students continue to get the great education that they are receiving. But I looked at myself and I'm in my office today as an executive. We have the right as sort of an essential member of the organization to be here. But I've been doing a lot of work from home and a lot less travel. And so I am actually local because I'm not flying anywhere. So my schedule has really, really changed. And in looking at that, my wife a number of months ago had said to me, "You have so much content that could help so many chiropractors. Like you should do something and put it online." And so I took that suggestion to task when I realized I had extra time on my hands. And I actually created a 6-module training on mindset for chiropractors. Now, initially, I was going to call it, creating a patient-centered practice. That's sort of the general model of the concept that I was sharing. And I've got one of my team members here at Life who's very masterful at creating PowerPoint presentations. She's been working at creating my PowerPoint presentations, and she suggested that I title it something different because it was part of the content. And years ago, I created what was called the Gold Star program, gain opportunities and life skills, by really setting the mindset to get to where you want to go. So it is all written up, and the PowerPoint slides are all done, and I should be recording the audio soon. Now, why am I saying that? I'm telling you that because the most important thing that you can do for yourself as a practicing chiropractor is to stay in charge of what you allow to live in your own mind, right? What you allow to live in your own mind. You could live in fear, which makes you afraid, or you can look at the word fear as an acronym, which means face everything and rise. So when I experience fear, because I do too, like anybody else, it lasts very short for me because I bring myself back to a state of gratitude. So if you get fear, you go, as chiropractors, right? You understand this. You go into fight or flight, right? You go into a sympathetic tone. And we're not going to get into the physiology of sympathetic tone, but you all know that sympathetic tone depresses everything other than what? Fight or flight. Get the heck out of there before the tiger bites my butt.
Great.
So it depresses immune system function, right? It depresses creativity. It depresses everything other than the ability to fight or flight. And so I bring myself back into a parasympathetic state. And the best way to do that is to take a few nice long deep breaths, allow your body to get into relaxation. And I'm very strong on gratitude, so I'm reaching into my pocket. I always carry a gratitude stone with me.
Nice.
This one's a heart shape. I have tons of them, but I give them away all over the place. But it reminds me to be grateful. So when this COVID-19 thing started happening, yes, I think the rabbit hole is really, really deep. But I'm pretty smart, so I do recognize it is a communicable disease. So we don't have to converse about that. But I reset my neurological tone. When I reset myself into parasympathetic by being grateful, now I start to access possibility. Mm-hmm. Now I start to access creativity. Now I start to access a good, healthy mind, body, and spirit. And so my suggestion to all our colleagues is focus on where you're at. Are you in sympathetic? Are you in parasympathetic? I understand. Some of you are having difficulties. There's still a rent to pay. There's still bills to pay. There's no income coming in. I get that. Now, you've got to learn how to deal with that. And then you have an opportunity, if you're not in your office at all, or even if you're in your office just a little bit of time, you have an opportunity to create content and to start sharing it on social media for free with your audience every single day. So what I'm talking about is 5 minutes. Do a 3 to 5 minutes Facebook Live and give advice to people on just healthy lifestyle. I'd come on, hey, good morning, it's Dr. Gilles. I know it's 10 o'clock on Monday morning, and I'd like to have you know X. And just share it with them and invite them to correspond with you, your practice members, right? Do that on Facebook Live, but also use your email database and converse with them, or open a telehealth line. Tell them all that you're going to be available between certain times every day to answer their questions. People are afraid.
Yeah.
If you get into a parasympathetic state, you can help others get into parasympathetic state, mm-hmm. right? We've got to stay compassionate, mm-hmm. because some people are afraid. I have no problem getting into my car and going to Home Depot for 5 minutes. I'll social distance because that's what they're asking.
Yeah.
But I know that I've taken care of my physical, mental, and spiritual well-being, and I know my body is healthy. I know that my immune system function is thriving, and so I'm going to trust that. But those are a couple things that chiropractors could be doing. We could go deeper, but those are a couple things I'd suggest that all chiropractors be doing. And guess what? You may continue to do that after. So start a telehealth line and do a 5-minute Facebook Live every single day. It's pretty easy. If this guy who graduated almost 41 years ago, next week actually, from chiropractic college, can learn how to do it and do Zoom calls and everything else, so can you. Another thing, choose a Zoom call. Create a Zoom link. Send it to all your patients and say that on Friday at such and such a time, you're actually going to host a 30-minute Zoom meeting. To what? To stay connected.
Right.
And then get them to invite friends to attend who aren't patients in your office yet. So get your practice members to invite other people. And guess what? When all this stuff is done, you have now created a huge possible influx of new patients into your practice, because instead of burying your head in the sand when the crisis hit, you chose to stand up with strength and you chose to continue to serve.
No, that's huge. And I think that's the biggest thing we've been trying to tell people too, is just stay connected with people. Because I know we've noticed this as well, is that even when you reach out to someone and help them, it automatically gets your mind out of that fear state, right? Once you get into that actually serving, it almost gets you in the present moment, which almost helps to get you parasympathetic as well. Hey?
Absolutely. Because, even if you chose to get a list and call every single patient just to say, hi, this is Dr. Don, just calling to see how everything's going with you and your family. They're going to go, oh my gosh, I'm so happy you called. And you're not calling to sell anything. You're not calling them to coerce them into doing anything. You're calling to stay connected, because people are currently pretty disconnected.
Yeah, totally.
I hosted a Lamarche virtual family reunion on Zoom yesterday.
You're a Zoom machine now.
so I'm the patriarch, right? I'm the oldest male in my family.
Yep.
I invited my sisters and their families and the nieces and nephews and the grandchildren. It was a blast. We were on it for about 45 minutes. And, I had it on all these different screens. Yeah, and of course the kids were screaming and, there's grandbabies and all of this. But it was so much fun.
Mm-hmm.
If I could do it, you can do it.
Well, and even just reaching out to friends too, because that was something that was very nice that you did for me last week, is that we were hanging out at home and all of a sudden I just get a call from Dr. Gilles and you're just checking in to see how things are going. So I think with everything being quiet in your life, it also sometimes gets you to reach out to friends that you might not have the chance to talk to very often.
And you've got time now. So take that opportunity to do even handwritten thank you notes, handwritten hellos, and actually drop them in the mailbox. People are bored. They're at home. If they get a note from their doctor and goes, oh my gosh, look at that. He or she actually took time to write me a note.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Last week on Facebook, I talked a little bit about gratitude. And it was a fairly long post, and it sort of positions you to see how many people are reading the entire post. But at the end of the post, I said, and if any of you want me to mail you a gratitude stone, please private message me your mailing address and I'll send you one or two or whatever you want. And I had a number of people take me up, but it told me that most people didn't read to the bottom of the post because that's where I gave them a gift. And so I've mailed some. I mailed some to Canada from the US. It doesn't cost that much. I spent maybe, $50, $60 in postage, but I've sent things to people.
Right.
In moments of biggest stress is where our service consciousness should be even bigger, right?
Mm-hmm.
You were, I had Dr. Jim Parker as my mentor. I'm not sure if you ever met Dr. Jim personally.
I didn't meet him personally, no.
Right? Okay, so I had him as my mentor. So for me, the greatest lesson I learned from him was loving service, my first technique. Mm-hmm. At Life University, a lot of people don't know that Dr. Sid Williams' first mentor, Dr. Sid was the founder of Life, since passed away, but his first mentor was Dr. Jim Parker. So the crest that you see behind me that says LP stands for lasting purpose. To give, do, love, serve from abundance with no expectation of return. And if you look at the concept taught by Dr. Parker and the concept taught by Dr. Williams, it's the exact same concept using different terminology.
Right.
So in moments of greatest need is where we as servants need to step up our service consciousness even more. Give where you can. Mm-hmm. Give where you can. And like I said, it costs nothing to do a Facebook Live. If you don't have the funds to mail a thank you letter to, or a thank you note, or handwritten, by the way, not a typed up note, handwritten. Right. So I write 5 thank you or congratulation notes 5 days a week. That means I do 25 every single week. That means if you do the math, I do like 1,200 a year. Sometimes my hand hurts. No, it doesn't. I only do 5 a day.
Right.
And sometimes it can be as easy as, dear Don, thanks so much for being awesome and for inviting me on your podcast. Love, Gilles. That fast.
Totally.
Goes into the mail.
How long have you done that for?
Oh my gosh. Dr. Parker had created something called a thank you gram. So I started that back in 1979 when I started practice. And the thank you grams were like a one little piece of paper. It was yellow and it went into a yellow envelope. And so I committed that I would do at least 5 thank you grams a week back then, because I was already, when I started in practice, I did more. As I got busier, I just ran out of time. So then I just committed to doing 5 a week. So what ended up Thursday morning was always my paperwork morning. So I would do my paperwork, but on my list was 5 thank you notes. So I would write 5 thank you notes. So I graduated from a thank you gram, which was, like I said, a little yellow piece of paper, to a more formal card that I had printed that had, Lamarche Family Chiropractic on the front. Actually, on the back side, on the front side is special words for you from Dr. Gilles Lamarche. And the inside of the card was empty. And it matched, our branding. It was sort of a gray with maroon ink. And yeah, I would do a minimum of 5.
Nice.
And the number of people that I got to connect with because I chose to show my gratitude was phenomenal. And so I didn't write them just to my patients for, always being on time, or for following through their care plan, or for referring Mrs. Jones. I would write them to people that I saw, in the local newspaper. I'm not a media guy, but every day I would flip through and I would ask my team, flip through. If there's someone we should congratulate or someone we should thank, let me know. And so if they found someone, they would just put their person's name and put the address, and often address the envelope. And then it'd be sitting on my desk. On Thursday, I'd get in and I'd see, oh yeah, Mrs. Jones, her daughter just got accepted to whatever. Summa cum laude, got accepted to University of Toronto. I say, dear Mrs. Jones, congratulations to you and your daughter for, and all of a sudden, 6 months later, Mrs. Jones is calling.
Yeah.
Because now she knows a chiropractor. Now all of a sudden she needs a chiropractor. Who's she going to call?
Totally. That's so good. Those are good, and those are just simple little things, right? That just they don't take very much time, but it's we kind of call it the compound interest of that over time, right? That makes a big difference, right?
Absolutely.
Now, next thing we wanted to talk about was Life University. So a lot of chiropractors are out there, and they can't see people, right? Because a lot of people are in quarantine. The universities have had a little bit of a challenge because now the students can't really be in class. So what's Life University doing to kind of pivot in this time?
Well, we've done amazing actually to pivot. It's very interesting because we were 2 weeks from the end of the quarter when the governor of Georgia ordered the universities to close. Mm-hmm. So we closed on the Friday. And I'll tell you, our decisions as an executive team almost were changing by the hour at some point because it was so new for everybody. Like, how do you deal with this? How do you deal with staff? We have 400 faculty and staff. We have almost 3,000 students. How do you manage all that? And so the initial thought was, well, we're going to postpone the end of the quarter and we're going to plan to come back kind of idea, not knowing the time. And all of a sudden we find out, well, the governor said, you're going to close for 4 weeks. So like, what are we going to do now? And so we're 2 weeks from the end of our quarter. And we decided that we would host the finals exams online. Had never done it.
Wow.
We had a very strong and a very good IT department. We have phenomenal faculty, but nobody had ever really graduated to doing exams online. And within about a week, every professor had their exams created for an online exam, taking exams online. And we launched that over a 5-day period that ended not last week, the Friday before. There were over, like I said, we have almost 3,000 students here. Most students took anywhere between 3 and 5 exams. So do the math. I can't remember the exact number of exams, but somewhere between, I think, 11 to 15,000 exams were taken online at an institution that had never done that.
Wow.
Without a glitch.
Really?
Without a glitch. All our students took their exams online. And I'll tell you, by Friday noon, because we were meeting on a regular basis every day with the entire executive team, by Friday noon, when this was coming down, our vice president of operations that's in charge of IT goes, my team did an awesome job. And our faculty did an awesome job. And the administration did an awesome job. And our students did an awesome job. So we converted all of that. And then when we recognized further, the next change was, and we'll start the next quarter whenever we can, well, it may extend into May.
Right.
It may extend into June. We don't really know. So in 7 to 10 days' time, our faculty, all of our faculty have converted the curriculum to online classes. And today, Life University started its spring quarter of 2020 online.
Wow.
And when we get the okay to reopen the campus, we will give our faculty and students a 7-day notice that they are to return to campus. But for now, we're 100% online. Chiropractors listening in and go, okay, how do you learn to adjust online? You can't learn to adjust online. Of course, we recognize that. And we're going to have to ramp up the labs when the students come back. However, the professors who actually teach technique have developed a technique curriculum online showing students exercises that they can do to develop the skills, etc. So I haven't had the preview of looking at the courses myself, but they have been developed. So they developed strategies to actually accomplish, or at least continue to maintain the skills that they had been developing.
Right.
So only time will tell how well it works. We're hopeful it's going to work. We're also recognizing we're likely going to have to increase the number of technique lab hours when the students do come back to campus. But we don't know, right? It's unknown for everybody.
Yeah, it's crazy, isn't it?
Well, I'll tell you, kudos to a phenomenal president, Dr. Rob Scott, who led the effort, and to our entire executive team, all our faculty, staff, who have been so supportive. So we're excited about where it's going. I mean, who knows what opportunities we'll present because we actually chose to do that.
Right. There's probably certain things that you'll keep that you, like out of certain changes, you might keep certain changes, right? Because it'll make you be innovative.
We may, but I'll tell you what, innovation has been the key word.
Yeah, totally.
I did not know how to use Zoom until 3 weeks ago.
And then for those who are listening to the podcast, they can't see, but now Gilles has all his fancy Life University decals and all his fancy stuff behind him. And I've been using Zoom for 3 years and I don't even know how to do all that stuff. So he's like a ninja now.
I've got a green screen behind me and I got marketing to create a virtual backdrop for me. So yeah, you know what? And I mean, my team, we'd have Zoom meetings, but they'd log on. I'd just walk into the boardroom and I would do what I normally do, right? I mean, I'm the guy who shares the intellectual property and shares ideas and shares, how we can actually get things done. But I didn't even know how to log on to Zoom meeting. But now, I mean, I realized how simple it was. And I was telling you earlier, I got a tutorial from somebody in our marketing department. So it really sped up the learning curve. I didn't have to go online and learn, but really it's not complicated at all. And
well, and that's it.
I filmed our first assembly, because we have 3 assemblies a quarter with a guest speaker. I actually recorded the assembly for week 2, which is next week. I recorded it this morning. And I was here on my own in my office, created a beautiful TV studio in my office. And I did it with 3 people. One was in Victoria, BC at 6 a.m. her time. One was in Chicago and one was in Puerto Rico.
Yeah, it's amazing. Well, and again, this time when we have downtime, this also helps us brush up on some skills. Because again, if we've been in practice the whole time and you're just mostly seeing practice members, you don't have time to learn these different skills because technology is gone. So it almost gives us the time to catch up on our learning so that we can kind of be more relevant into the future.
It really does. That's what it's done for me. I can guarantee you that. I'm surprised at how easy it's been. And even though I was really, really fearful and I resisted for a long time, but like I said, now if you were to walk into my office is sort of not separated, but it's like, one large office and it has a restroom on one side. But on this side where I'm at now, I have a small conference table. So my small meetings of 3 to 4 people happen in this office. And then just down the hall, maybe, 10, 12 meters down the way, I've got a full conference room for myself and my team. But I've set up this little conference area as a TV studio.
Nice.
And it's taken up, really, it's about as big as the table. So I guess my entire studio right now is maybe 8 or 9 feet wide by about 6 feet deep. So 50 square feet, I've got a TV studio, rocking it out. If I do a different interview for today's Conversations on Leadership, which is a podcast I'm starting in May, the backdrop will change, and it will change that fast.
That's awesome. Why don't you tell the listeners the name of your new podcast?
It's going to be called Today's Conversations on Leadership. Mm-hmm. It's not just for chiropractors, but of course, chiropractors will benefit. Life University has 20 academic degree programs. And the way I tell the Life University story for those who don't know much about Life University other than it's a chiropractic college is that from its humble beginnings in 1974 as Life Chiropractic College, occupying 1/3 of a rented building in an industrial complex on Barclay Circle in Marietta, Georgia, and offering 1 degree program, Life University has expanded to offer 20 academic programs on 110 beautiful acres on the same street, where we now have hundreds of thousands of square feet of classroom, lab, office, and residence. We have over 700 students that actually live on our campus. And we now also have 20 intercollegiate sports, from men and women's rugby, men and women's soccer, men and women's wrestling, women's lacrosse, men and women's volleyball, men and women's basketball. It's a phenomenal place. And I feel blessed every day to show up here.
So cool. We were talking when you gave me a call last week. You're talking a little bit about chiropractic research, because right now, we have we definitely know that we need more research. We don't want to be paralyzed because we can't move forward because we don't have the research. But I was wondering if you could just share with the listeners some of the ideas that Life University's had to maybe help to contribute to that area.
Well, this COVID-19 situation has really ramped that up in my own mind. And the reason why it's ramped it up in my own mind is because for the chiropractors listening in, not for public viewing, but for the chiropractors listening in, we all know, without a doubt, anecdotally, we all know without a doubt from listening to our patients that when they've been under care for a number of months, they all come back and they tell you, doc, like every spring I used to get the flu and I'd be so sick I'd be in bed for a week. This year, nothing. Do you think that might have something to do with the work you've been doing? And of course, as a chiropractor, myself practicing for 25 active years, I would say, well, let's look at the autonomic nervous system chart here. What do you think? Do you think there's a direct impact between how your nervous system is functioning and how everything else in your body is functioning better? They go, yeah, of course there is. I said, yeah, there's a link. And so as COVID-19 came out and some chiropractors started talking about the 1918 pandemic flu, and there was a story that came out that I'd read years and years ago that apparently those under chiropractic or osteopathic care were being saved, or some cases that doctors had said they could do nothing without. Chiropractors were going in and adjusting them, and they were saving 80% of the people. And so chiropractors started saying, we could be your answer for COVID-19. No, you can't say that. And you say, well, Gilles, you just said that in your understanding that chiropractic care enhances immune function. Anecdotally, that's been my experience. And unfortunately, we can't say that out there, even, even though there are some studies that show, increase in interleukin with chiropractic adjustments, increase in CD4 count with chiropractic adjustments, but there hasn't been enough robust research. So that brings us to trying to answer the question that you just gave me. I have to give a bit of a background.
Yeah.
Life University under President Scott is dedicated to ramping up our research. We have a great research department that's been here at the university for over 20 years. Our research director is Dr. Stephanie Sullivan. She is a DC who then went on to get her PhD in neuroscience. She is brilliant. She's already published. Might not have heard of her that much because she hasn't been out there that vocal. But I had a conversation with her about 6 weeks ago, and this was before COVID-19 outbreak, certainly in the US and in North America. And I said to Stephanie, I said, part of my role at Life University is to raise money. And, we have a certain amount of money that's dedicated to the research. We have an extremely well-equipped laboratory. I mean, all the latest technical equipment that you could possibly want in a research department as it relates to neuroscience research, we have it right here. Right next door to me, we have the Neuro Life Institute that has been open again for a number of years that deals with all sorts of issues related to concussion, post-stroke victims, et cetera, all sorts of deep neurological issues. But I said to Stephanie, I said, I know that you're limited because you have this budget to conduct research and you have, a few staff that actually work with you. I said, what could you do? What could you do as the director of research at Life University if I could raise you an extra $1 million a year? She's like, oh my gosh, Gilles, the stuff we could do would be like out of this world. She said, because we wouldn't have to buy any equipment. We wouldn't need any extra space. We have all that. I would hire more people. So what I need is more people to be able to do the research. I need statisticians. I need, people to do the IRBs. I need more people. So I started planning with my team about what we would develop. And when I said a number of months ago, it's actually way before that because we're now in April. This was back in July of 2019. Mm-hmm. And the reason why I remember July, it was after I did a trip to Massachusetts. And I was actually going on a trip to Massachusetts to spend a weekend at the Kennedy compound with Robert Kennedy Jr. and his wife and a few other folks. And Dr. Sullivan said to me, I met this chiropractor who practices in Massachusetts, and I've been conversing with her about how, she might be able to do some research, or we might be able to do some research together, because this chiropractor is very interested in research. And she said she was adjusting someone, and when the lady got up, because she knew the lady's background, had been a practice member of hers for a while. The chiropractor looked at her and said, Joan, for lack of a different name, said, Joan, you're the director of a family foundation, aren't you? And she said, yes, a very wealthy family foundation, by the way. And she said, would you be interested in donating money to research, or would your foundation be interested? And I said, well, maybe. And the doctor says, and then she said, well, what would that look like? I said, well, what do you mean? I said, well, what would an initial donation, what kind of initial donation would you require to do this study? Because she had shared a study she wanted to do. And the chiropractor looked, she said, well, I don't know, like 200,000? And the chiropractor said, she looked at her, she said, okay, sure. Okay, what that woke up in me was, here is a patient, practice member, laying on a table, getting adjusted, who gets asked to contribute to a research, and she's willing to donate 200 grand out of the gate.
Right.
When Stephanie was sharing that with me, I was like, oh my gosh, we have never tapped in to our patient base to actually support research. I don't know what it's like in Edmonton, but I know what it's like in Atlanta. There isn't a place that I go grocery shopping that there isn't some time in the year, 2, 3, or 4 times in the year, that they're not asking for an extra $1 on my grocery order.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
There's not a hospital campus that you drive on, whether it's in Canada, the US, or any other developed nation, that doesn't have at some place somebody's name listed on a building. Right? You go to Toronto, you go to Toronto General Hospital, there's the Peter Monk Cardiology Center, for which Mr. Monk donated millions, tens of millions of dollars to have that built. So we've never tapped into that. Right. So the idea that I launched with my team in July was, what if we had a Founders Day of Giving for Research, September 18th. One day a year, we're going to ask people to donate to chiropractic research. And we launched it in 2019, but we didn't have a lot of time to plan it, and we raised a little bit of funds. We came back and said, so what could we do better? And now, in talking about COVID-19 and the fact that we don't have the research to prove what we could prove, in my opinion, I believe we could prove it.
Yeah.
And therefore, we can't send that message out to the public to offer that level of help. What if we did have that research already? How implicated would the chiropractors be in this pandemic? We'd be hugely implicated, because we'd be helping millions and millions and millions of people. Right. And so what we've decided to do is to launch a month of giving for chiropractic research in September. So September 1, you'll see posts, social media posts set up from Life University. But to do that, I have a small team. So I'm the Vice President of University Advancement. I have a team of 9 people that work with me. Some work more on the alumni side, some work at development, which is fundraising, some work at managing the systems that we have inside our office. But my goal, and for those of you listening, if you have an interest, you can private message me, certainly on Facebook. I'm pretty easy to find on Facebook. But if you have an interest, I am looking to attract at least 2 fundraising ambassadors from every province in Canada and from every state in the United States to start. So if we do that, that means we're going to have 120 ambassadors. The job of the ambassadors would be to commit themselves to raising $1,000 in their practice during the month of September in 2020 and every year after that. And to find 20 other ambassadors in their province or their state that are willing to do the same thing. How long is that going to take? It's going to take interactions with with at least 20 colleagues to say, hey, let's work at this. Life University will produce all the collateral materials. So if you become a fundraising ambassador, we're going to provide you with social media posts. We're going to provide you with a sign to put on your front desk. And my suggestion would be, ask your patients to contribute $1. And depending on the size of your practice, if you're not going to see 1,000 patients that month, maybe choose to contribute yourself or ask them to give $1 or more, whatever it might be.
Right.
And send it in as one donation to Life University. And I guarantee you, we're going to conduct research like research has not been done at that level, as far as not the quality of the research, because we know that New Zealand's conducting great research, through Dr. Heidi Havik and a lot of people that she's partnered with who are doing some fantastic work for us. So on this one, certainly kudos to Heidi and her entire team. But Life University as an institution, as the largest chiropractic institution, in time will be seen, in my opinion, as the most, as the greatest contributor to chiropractic research on the planet. Now, vitalistic, neurologically sound chiropractic research.
Nice.
We're not going to be doing back pain and neck pain research. There's plenty of it out there. That's not our goal. Our goal is to focus on the vitalistic paradigm and develop research proposals and therefore conduct the research that will actually show that what principled chiropractors have been saying for decades, over 100 years, is actually true. Not anecdotal, not woohoo, I feel awesome when I get off the table, but why you feel awesome when you get off the table. Because as soon as we get really, really clear with why that happens, the rest is history, my friends.
Oh, totally. And so you said, so any listeners out there that might be interested in this, they can Facebook message you. Like they could do this around the world too. Just doesn't have to be in North America.
Anywhere in the world.
All over.
Yeah, if you want to be a fundraising ambassador for Life University and help us conduct more vitalistic, principled, neurologically centered research, absolutely.
Uh-huh. So they just contact you, and then you'll be able to hook them up with all of that stuff to have at their front desk.
Yeah, my team has actually last week. My team actually worked at creating all the collateral materials, all the Facebook posts. All of that is actually being created. I'm going to get to see some of them. I've got a meeting tomorrow. I'm going to get to see some of the fruits of their labor, if you like, that they've created, and we're going to be rolling this out. Our goal is to roll it out in August, and to do maybe a short training session that might be on video or might be on Zoom, but do a short training session for those who choose to become fundraising ambassadors. And you know what? Like I said, my goal is at least 2, but I mean, Edmonton's big enough. We could have 2 or 3 fundraising ambassadors right in Edmonton.
True.
Right?
Totally.
Have 2 in California because, we could have 25 just in LA alone.
Right. No, that's awesome. Yeah. So everybody out there, let's all contribute to this. Cause again, the more traction we can get, we especially during times like this, it feels like a lot of chiropractors' hands have been tied, and it's unfortunate because we're talking to a lot of chiropractors, they feel just brokenhearted that we know that we can we could have created a bigger impact in this COVID-19 if we had that research, but we're kind of forced to not be, to contribute, right? So everybody, let's try to all contact Gilles and see if we can get a bunch of ambassadors out there and raise some money in September. Gilles, coming close to the end of our time, we have people all over the world who want to get a little bit of inspiration. What would you like to leave everybody with?
Well, it's interesting. This morning, as I said, I recorded our first assembly that's going to be online, and one of the guests is the president and CEO of Chiro One Wellness Centers out of Chicago. And we had, part of the conversation was around the practicing that are suffering the most. And this is not to judge anyone. This is to give you more hope of what you could potentially do even better. But those who are suffering the most, who are able to stay open, are those who have probably not educated their patients on the true value of chiropractic. Mm-hmm. It has been his experience. He said, even looking at their clinics, he said some of their chiropractors are more pain focused. And he says, now we're finding out who has done a really good job on the education piece. So I suggest that if you have not been doing this, during these slower times, train yourself to do some of the basic things that I learned from my mentor, Dr. Jim Parker. If you are not conducting a regular patient information class, whatever you call it, spinal healthcare class, neurological healthcare class, doctor, whatever you're doing, if you're not doing that, train yourself to do one, and you're going to be scared as crazy the first time you do it. Who cares? Get over it. It's not about you. It's whether or not you get the message out. Because I used to be scared to speak in public. Hard to believe, right, Don?
Yes.
So use this time to sharpen your skills and use it to sharpen your saw. The sharpen your saw idea really comes from, a bunch of different authors, but Stephen Covey in his book, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, used that as the 7th habit. Take time to sharpen your saw. In other words, take time to look at you and take time to do something for you. So you can come out of this stronger, mentally, physically, and spiritually stronger. That you get really, really clear on what it is to be a chiropractor, really, really clear on what it is to choose to be a servant leader and to lead your population. So I chose this because my mentor told me that's who I should become. And servant leadership just became part of my life. It's what I do. It's who I am. I don't have to think about it. I wake up and I go, who am I going to serve today? It's that simple. And so a few ideas that I shared with you during the podcast, implement those ideas, whether it's a Facebook Live for 5 minutes, but do it regularly. If you're going to do it for 5 minutes, do it every day, same time, Monday to Friday. Do weekends if you want to, but at least Monday to Friday. Get some notes, write some thank you notes, write some congratulation notes, get into that state of gratitude. Make sure you bring yourself into a parasympathetic state, and then just sit there and breathe and see what happens when you create a vacuum. Ideas from all over the place are going to come to you that you never even knew you had.
That's awesome. All right, my man, thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to be on the podcast. I really appreciate you, Joe.
Thank you, Don. It's always a pleasure, Dr. Don. And thank you for doing the great work you're doing to serve the masses all over the globe. You and Brandy both. Love you both.
We had good mentors. So everyone out there,
that may be a better mentor.
Yeah, totally. So everybody out there, I hope you enjoyed the podcast, and we will see you next time. Thank you for listening to the podcast. If you have received value from this episode, please share this with a fellow chiropractor and take some time to rate and review us on iTunes or wherever your favorite place is to listen to podcasts. If you're interested in learning more about our programs and events, please visit www.thevitalityshift.com or connect with me on Facebook. I would love to hear from you. So until next time, Dr. Don out.